Welcome to Mastermind Minutes, the leading podcast for franchisors, franchisees, and entrepreneurs of all types. We have one guest, we ask one question, and we get one expert answer, and we do it in minutes, not hours. Hello again, and welcome to another edition of Mastermind Minutes. My name is Gary Occhigrosso. I am the founder and managing partner for Franchise Growth Solutions, as well as the publisher of the National Franchise Newsletter. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, as you know, well, you wouldn't know if you're joining us for the first time, but for those of you who listen regularly, you know I generally will tell people that Mastermind Minutes is a very simple concept. We have one guest, we ask one question, we get one expert answer. We do it in minutes, not hours. And while we realize that may not be enough time to really get deep into the topic that we're talking about, we will give you the contact information of our guests. So if you choose to reach out and learn more about our guests or the companies that they're with, that's up to you. We'll give you that information. And today, my guest is Vinny Provenzano, who he serves as the Senior Vice President of Global Franchising at Express Employment International since January of 2018. His prior experience includes a tenure at Orange Leaf Frozen Yogurt, where Vinny held the position of Vice President of Franchise Development and was responsible for driving domestic and international unit growth, as well as managing lead generation, which you know we always talk about on this program, candidate screening, site selection, all the good things that go along with that. He also holds a Bachelor of Business Administration degree in accounting and finance from the University of Oklahoma. I'm really happy to have him on the show today. So, Vinny, thank you very much for being with us. Before we get into our question, tell us more about you and tell us more about Express International, and then we'll dive into it.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate you having me. I think you covered the basics, as you mentioned, in the industry now coming up on 15, almost 16 years. Quite enjoy franchising. We were just chatting about that a moment ago. Entrepreneurial-based business. You know, we enjoy helping people get into business, helping them achieve that dream without having to do it by themselves. And so I was drawn to that. I probably say, like most, I fell into the industry, not something I think most people grow up saying, I want to be in franchising. But right. I quickly, it was my passion to be involved in business. That was very clear to me. And franchising delivers that, helps people into business so that they're doing so without doing it by themselves.
Yeah, 100%. I started out in the radio business. Okay. And after I got burned out, and I started young, I started doing voiceovers when I was like 16. So by the time I was 25, 26, the New York radio business, I was burned out. I mean, like just enough. So I opened up a Dunkin' Donut shop. I became a franchisee. Don't ask me why Dunkin' agreed to award a 26-year-old kid from Queens and his cousin a franchise, which we did, and we were successful at it. The business way back then was very different than it is now. But sure. From there, when I sold my shop, one of the executives at Dunkin' said, you know, you should become a consultant in the franchising business. I was on the advisory council, but like you said, like I didn't wake up going, oh, I'm gonna strive to be in the franchise business. It just sort of unfolded. And when you mention sort of the trials and tribulations of it, which we're going to talk about, and what I do, I'm generally in the weeds in the restaurant business. That's most of our brands, which kind of leads me to the question here, because you're no longer in the food business. You were with Orange Leaf, but now you're more in a service business. But I think more appropriately, you're really in a people business. I mean, you are really, really embedded in that. So what I would like to know, our question today, is, you know, what do you believe it takes to succeed in a people-driven franchise model like staffing? And we'll kind of break it down a little bit. One, on the franchisor side, like picking the right people who are aligned. But I think the question really is, we can start with, as a franchisee, like, what does it take? I mean, because my product, I guess I would say, is people.
It's relationship building at its simplest. And To the question of what does it take, I think the obvious answer would be you really need to like people. You need to want to spend time with people. And
Well, that eliminates me.
well, it should eliminate a lot, but everyone tends to say, "Well, I like people." It's when you're really immersed in it. It's unique. Every business has a customer. We've got a few different customers. Of course, it would be the client companies that are needing people that have some hiring needs. But we also have our customer of the person looking for a job. We really sit in the middle as a matchmaker, so to speak. And so for our franchisees, naturally, when they're dealing with more than one customer and both of those customers being humans, you've really got to enjoy people. We tend to say this, it's important. Our franchisees tend to be very curious individuals. Because it is a relationship that begins on the client company side. That's where you're identifying hiring opportunities, areas for people to go to work. We've all hired, we've all had to unfortunately fire, vacancies come open, growth happens. Companies need people. They need those individuals to fill those jobs. And so our franchisees, they spend a lot of their time, spending time with businesses that are looking for those individuals. They're trying to uncover hiring challenges, growth cycles. A lot of our value proposition comes through the seasonality of businesses as they're ebbing and flowing, needing people on a contingent labor side. That type of relationship build allows us to have our foot in the door to understand how we can solve that need.
Hmm. Okay, so let's just break this down here just to help me
Sure.
understand a little bit. Um, walk me through the process of the franchisee now. So the franchisee has a client customer,
Hmm.
a company,
Yeah.
and whether that's a one-off or sort of a regular thing where, that franchisee's the company's go-to person. Um, Walk me through how is the franchisee bringing people on board as candidates? Is that well, just walk me through that process.
Yeah, it's the question we often get is which starts first, the applicant or the client company? The
Yeah.
answer is both, because both create opportunities. I'll start with that client company. So that relationship's formed, you understand their hiring need, and you would then post that job. The franchisee and their team are going to recruit individuals that fit those open positions. A myriad of different roles would fit the bill. And of course, they're going to have candidate flow coming into the business. They're going to be meeting with, job seekers, people who need roles, and they're going to be understanding that individual's background. Naturally, some will be a perfect fit for the role at that client company. Others have different talents, different unique traits that may make them a good opportunity for other businesses. So, uniquely enough, those candidates come in, the ones that maybe aren't a perfect fit for the client company you already have. It would open up the door for you to call other companies and say, "Hey, I've got a candidate A or a candidate B that's got these skills, these background traits. Would this be a fit for your company?" There you form a new relationship potentially in helping those individuals find work. Naturally, that cycle continues, and it goes back to why I said curiosity. It starts a lot of times with that client company just looking for what are their, how do they make money? What do their growth cycles look like? That curiosity of being able to walk into a manufacturing plant, a logistics center, and just asking some curious questions of what do they do and how can you help solve a need?
Mm. You used the word curiosity a few times now.
Mhm.
Help me understand that. I mean, when you say curious, I mean, just help me understand what you mean by that.
Sure. If we drove through a market of, we'll say a higher performing express office, and I started pointing out their client companies, I'd probably be pointing at companies that you didn't even know were companies. You see a big kind of vanilla building, a white rooftop building, a lot of cars in the parking lot, but you may not even know that what that business is or what it does. We probably have associates on assignment working for that company. It could be logistics, manufacturing, distribution. And when I say curiosity, that relationship likely formed through we'll call it a cold sales call, going on to that client site, talking to a decision maker, a hiring manager, the owner, and asking them, what is it that this business does? How do you perform? What's your cycle look like? Your seasonality, by asking curiosity based questions to try and understand. That's really what it is. It's needs based assessment. What does this company do? What are the skills they may be hiring for? What's a challenge they have in the hiring process? Where do they have open positions? That curiosity starts as what does the company do? How do they make money? What markets are they involved in? That relationship based curiosity can form a partnership that could last decades.
Yeah, that makes sense. But that sort of leads me to think or believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you're servicing, and maybe not, all sectors. So are we talking only office people? Are there retail, restaurants, service? If I have a service brand, or if I own a restaurant and I need a general manager, um, are you my guy?
There, we place every type of job, blue collar, white collar, everything in between. And the beauty of allows the franchisee, the business owner, to choose the clients that they'd want to work with. So to your question, yeah, we could place someone from a forklift driver all the way to a senior executive at a company in a white collar role, a professional role, as we'd call that. Those opportunities exist. It really just depends upon the type of business that franchise owner wants to build. It is a massive industry. The US, I believe, is expected to reach 150, 160 billion this year. Those are all types of roles within there. And
Yeah.
they have different, cycles. You think about, hiring for a semi-skilled position, there's a lot more applicants that fit that skill set. It's general labor, widespread versus someone that, I want an engineer that's capable with these certain criteria and skill sets, credentials. It's a longer search cycle, maybe less candidates that fit that position.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know because, I mean, we have lots of clients, lots of companies that are always on the
Sure.
lookout for people. As I mentioned earlier, the vast majority of the brands that are in the Franchise Growth Solutions portfolio are restaurants or fast casual or fast food, that sort of stuff. It's interesting to me, I guess if I said, complete this sentence, what would you say? Our ideal franchisee is blank.
I would say sales driven, motivated. And I'm very specific in saying it that way because most of our franchisees don't come from staffing. 95%, I think, is our number. 96% came from a corporate, middle to senior level management role. And they were looking to own a business. They didn't think staffing was they didn't even know that that was a business opportunity in most cases. But they're motivated. They want to grow a business. They are the face of that business. And so they've got to have that driven mentality. You mentioned the fast casual food, the restaurant industry. A lot of those businesses can benefit from great branding and a customer experience that attracts, people willing to come and patron that location. Whereas our business, it is very inexpensive in a sense to set up, but you've got to go out and get the business. You've got to be willing to go out, get face to face with decision makers and hiring managers. And that would be the catch. Generally speaking, when someone would say to me, hey, you're talking $150,000 to start an express, typically, average office greater than 2 years is about a 5 million revenue. What's the catch? That sounds too good to be
Oh,
true.
that sounds way too good to be true. Is that in your item 19 in your
That
franchise?
is in our item 19. You
Okay.
can go see it.
All right, tell me more about that because I was going to ask you, I don't usually talk about franchising and franchise sales because I don't want the program to be lead. I don't want it to be a commercial, but I will say this, you just got my attention and since it's my program, I can break the rules. Talk to me about that. What, 100,
And I'm very aware that
150 turnkey and
150 all in, yes, 150,000 all in average cost, and yes, offices open are greater than 2 years, average over. So I think it's 5.33 million in item 19, and that generally does what it just did there, which is catch your attention. You're going to say, "What's the catch?" The catch is that this is not a business that the business comes to you. I won't name names, but if there were, golden arches in a drive-through, it fills up naturally. People get that business model.
yep.
For us, this is something where you'll set up your brick and mortar, 1,000 square feet, you'll hang your sign. Business isn't coming to you. You've got to go out and make those relationships happen. That's why I mentioned that curiosity. You've got to be willing to say, what companies are around me? They may be hiring, they may not want a salesperson coming in the door, but you've got to go in there and not be a salesperson, but build a relationship, identify hiring challenges, and fit that need and solution-based assessment.
Yeah, because at some point, every company will need a person or people. And
Absolutely.
one of the things that I sort of preach and teach to our clients, matter of fact, a little shameless self promotion. If you go on my website, you'll see a seminar that I did, or not a seminar, but a presentation that I did to a group of franchisees down in Austin, Texas last year, and it was about building a team.
Yeah.
And some of the folks asked me because I have this belief and a practice that every other week on a Thursday, I was accepting applications and interviewing people. Always,
Beautiful.
always. And I
Yes,
trained all my managers to always do that. And they would say, well, but we don't need anybody. I would say,
sure.
yes, you do, because you
You
always
will.
have the bottom 20% of your staff.
Yes.
And if you're out looking for people and you come across that superstar, you know what? The person who's at the very bottom of your team that is just, there's always that few
Yeah,
people. You're just going to elevate and build your team and improve your team. That's your goal as a business owner. You want to have
absolutely.
the best team possible. So I never waited for an opening to hire someone, because I found that when I did that, and I see franchisees when they do that, they're flying by the seat of their pants. They're hiring somebody. Typically, the person they hire doesn't get the right training. They just go shadow Tommy for 2 days, and all of a sudden you know the job. So
Sure.
when you're bringing people in, and when your franchisees are bringing candidates in and creating those relationships with those client companies, is you know it, are there more pieces to this? Is there an advisory? Is there a narrative that some level of assistance in terms of onboarding the person with the client company that is helpful in retention?
Absolutely. And I'd say that's as we dig further into that curiosity, it is a consultative business. And I say that it's not just, oh, you need someone, let me go find someone and throw them over the wall and hopefully they do well for you. I think what separates, and I'll say for Express, we play in that 150, $170 billion industry in the US specifically. What we focus on in our model is, not just taking any order and throwing any person at it. We've got to sit down and really understand the business. And that goes back to that, what is the role that they'd be playing, truly taking what we'd call it as a job order, taking that to heart and trying to truly solve that need,
Mhm.
and asking good questions. And there are, of course, our training and our onboarding will help a franchisee learn that criteria. But it's really understanding that business's needs so that when we are meeting prospective, what we call them associates, people are going to go work on assignment there. It's not just anyone. We've really got to find that fit. And it's not always skill set resume. It could be cultural fit, making sure that they're going to join that team and they embody the culture of that organization. And that's again where I keep going back to that curiosity. That may be 2 or 3 visits. It may be taking the recruiter who's looking for the candidates, taking them on site and having them come meet the client company and the hiring manager to get day in the life. Those are things that not every staffing company would do. And that's where Express is going to position ourselves as we aren't going to be the cheapest. We're not going to necessarily be the fastest, but we want to provide the best service that will come through, quality checks, calling to make sure the associates showed up on time and did they wear the right shirt? Did they perform the duties that were needed? It's when we deliver that invoice, we do it by hand. That first one, we go face to face with that decision maker to say, hey, did we meet your needs? What other roles may you have? Those types of relationship building. It is quality assurance in many cases.
Yeah, and I mean I can really see that, because it really is all about people
That
in
is
in
it.
your business. So just to kind of bring this full circle and kind of wrap it up here, obviously I'd love to have your last thoughts on the entire subject. I mean, I could talk about this forever, because one of the
Sure.
things that, again, we're an advisory in our company, and one of the things we sort of, my term is preach and teach, is that you have to be proactive. You have to constantly be out there building your team, because a franchisee, again, in my world, okay, a franchisee that might own a restaurant. Well, if that franchisee has all the money in the world and can find every
Mhm.
great location in the world, they still can't grow. Why? Because they don't have a team. They don't build a team. Building that team is the most important aspect of not only building a single unit business, but a multi-unit business. So
100% agree.
so just as a last thought, what are your thoughts on that in terms of where you see team building in the scheme of building an enterprise for a franchisee with multiple units, or not?
Yeah, I mean, you just touched it perfectly. Is that a franchisee? No one will ever grow their business like them because they're the owner. And I think what the call to duty for them is to develop people within their business that have future ownership in mind. That doesn't necessarily have to be equity stakes, but that mentality of replicating yourself. Again, no one's going to care as much as the owner, But if you have vested interest in expanding that empire to other footprint locations, you can't be in more than one place at once as you, the owner. So you've got to try and how do you develop people within your team to think like you think? And you can't expect that without bringing them into the fold. And as they develop and grow, bring them into the P&L statement, bringing them into the decision making, and giving them that understanding of the responsibility and the liability that comes with being an owner. Because as you look to second location, maybe rather than having equity in the first, maybe it's they take partnership in the second. You've developed them enough that they can go be, that plant that flag in that second location. And maybe there's a milestone, an earn out, a growth mentality for them as an individual. To me, those conversations need to be in the hiring process. That doesn't mean equity is given in day one, but set that expectation for your future leaders that say, if you want to get here, here's what we need to do. Grow with me because I have ambition and I want to grow an empire and I can't do it without people.
Yeah, yeah. Well said. Well said. All right, Vinny, if somebody wants to reach out to you or learn more about Express Employment, what's the fastest, simplest way for someone to do that?
Sure. I'd say expressfranchising.com. My name is real easy, Vinny Provenzano, right? They can spell that, but they could probably
Easy.
find me on LinkedIn if they've got questions for me directly. And then, yeah, they could definitely inquire through the site, get in touch with me or anyone on my team to learn more about Express.
So it's expressfranchise.com.
Expressfranchising.com.
Expressfranchising.com. Okay. Well, I want to thank you for being with us today. Again,
Absolutely.
this is a topic, the entire topic of building a team is one that is, I don't believe enough time is spent on it.
Agreed.
Everybody's worried about making the pizza, but very few people are worried about who do I hire to make the pizza. So, I do appreciate your time today, and I look forward to having you back on because it is a
Thank you.
fascinating topic.
Likewise. I'd be happy to come back.
Great.